We look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth. It was because here in this land, we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look.
A first cousin of mine stopped by the farm one day. He says, "I'm going to join the Army. You want to go with me?" I said, "What?" Anyway, a few weeks later, we ended up in Shreveport and going through the physical and raising our hand. He failed the physical and I passed. Did not go. I did.
I was drafted.
Okay, so
They suggested that most of us who were then halfway through our junior year, that the engineers get deferments and be allowed to stay until they graduated.
okay, and so after you graduated,
I
then
went to the draft board, signed off that I am through school.
okay,
Shortly thereafter, I wound up Camp Beauregard being taken into the Army.
I was in a tech. I started college in 1946 and I finished in 1950. And the Korean War was going by then, and I knew I would have to go into service once I was out of college. So I decided to hook up with the Navy and go through flight training. The idea of flying, but my dad and my brothers were both Navy people, and I thought, well, I'll keep up the family tradition and I'll join the Navy. So helped me decide.
Drafted.
all right. And did you have a choice of which branch you went into?
No, it just said that I was chosen. I had
Okay.
been chosen, and it was all strictly
Chosen
Army.
for the Army,
Yeah.
okay.
I was in my second year of junior college, and it just wasn't doing anything for me at the time, right? So I figured that I needed to do something. I really wanted to see the world. Therefore, the most likely place or likely way to do that was to join the military. And that's the motivating factor for me to join the military.
And this was 10 o'clock at night, December 31st, 1944. Daily shift turned, and I left my musette bag in the cave with Manuel, my friend. And I just had my rifle and the traditional 2 grenades. And I went back, it was about quarter of a mile, to where we had a telephone set up deal. And I called in and reported what I had seen, that there was fire this way and that way, and small arms and whatever. And walking back, it was not snowing. It was a kind of a pleasant evening, if there could be such a thing when it's that cold. And there was a guy standing by a tank destroyer, one of the brand big new types, smoking a cigarette. And I stopped and talked to him a few minutes, and he was very pleased with that new weapon. And I got almost back to where I started up the hill, and I came under artillery fire, it was mortar fire, and I got wounded. And fortunately, I was close enough that I could whistle. And along the sergeant said, "Yeah," and he sent my buddy down to pick me up. And of course, I couldn't walk. As I say, I knew I had been wounded because that's the first time my feet had been warm in several days. And there was blood running into my boots. But very fortunately, about this time a Jeep came by, and it's the first Jeep I had seen come by. He flagged them down, they loaded me in it, and the bad part is that Lieutenant Price, one of my favorite officers, was in the back with a very severe head wound. That's what they had gone out to get him. He'd been on patrol. And so that was that. I went to the first station, they patched me up, stopped the blood, filled me up with morphine, put me in a ambulance. And you can still see artillery fire and stuff, flashing some flares. And after a while, I said, "Well, I'm out of here." And they took me to a VAC hospital in Verviers, Belgium. And the next thing I woke up and it was New Year's Day, about 10 o'clock at night. It's been 24 hours. And this nurse says, "Would you like something to eat?" And I said, "Yes, I think I can." She says, "Where have you been?" "I scrubbed you for an hour. I've never seen anybody so dirty." I said, "You haven't been where I've been."
The truce was signed on our way to Guam. We were aboard ship and they signed the Korean truce when they decided to do the demilitarized zone and end the war.
Okay, so you never heard the enemy. You were far away.
Never got
from
shot
there.
at. Never.
So you never had a time where you didn't think you were going to survive then
Never,
from the
never did.
from the.
Sometimes coming aboard ship at night, you wonder if you're going to survive, but no.
Did you do much nighttime training?
We did a good bit, yeah.
Okay. So how did you see to come in to land on that deck?
The ship had a set of what we call pin lights right down the center of the deck. There were no floodlights on the carrier deck. When you're in a war zone, you don't need to light your ship up. So there were pin lights. The only place you could see the pin lights was when you lined up with the ship. When you got in direct line with the ship, you could see the pin lights. But then there were LSOs. They wanted the aft end, the rear end of the ship, giving you signals to come in. And when you got to the ship, they either gave you a cut, which you cut your engine and landed, or they gave you a wave off. If you're not in position to land, or in the right position, they would give you a wave off. They had black lights on them, and they had iridescent stripes on, so they stood out like a sore thumb. You could see the LSO, but that's about all you could see. You could barely see the carrier deck. Like I say, it was not floodlights, so, but you knew it was there, you know.
Right.
You could see the pin lights, so you knew there was a ship on either side of
Right.
those pin lights. And you could see the LSO, and he told you whether to land or not.
So you knew if the pin light you didn't see the pin light, you knew you were off course.
If you didn't see pin lights, you were not lined up, and you'd get a wave off pretty quick. Had to take very few wave offs, so.
Now you
Had
did
a lot of practice getting ready for that.
Well enough of, they sent me to multi-engine training.
Okay.
That's 2 engine or
Right.
more,
Right.
following flight school. Completed that, and then they received orders for Vietnam.
Okay.
Got off of the plane, and then it was an immediate, hot air, humid air hit me in the face, and I said, "Ooh, I don't know about this." Successfully graduated from flight school. I was promoted to CW1. We were there to look, find, and report locations.
Okay.
And a lot of it was done in Morse code. Come back to Fort Rucker, Alabama for training as an instructor pilot in multi-engine airplanes. I was assigned to Pentagon Flight Detachment, Davison Army Airfield, Fort Belvoir, Virginia.
Okay.
We had an array of airplanes. We had that Cessna T-42 that I was telling you about, single engine airplane. We had Aero Commanders, which was a low wing multi-engine airplane that was termed as Eisenhower's favorite. We had the Queen Airs, twin engine prop airplane, and King Airs, which was a turbo prop. The King Airs were favorite. Of course, that was where I received my commission, was at Fort Belvoir. After that, I went back to Vietnam. We were a command airplane company that provided personnel air support for the entire country of Vietnam. Passenger service, if you will. Vietnamese, Americans, civilians, military, all dignitaries, all types. And in the first 4 to 5 months, I performed that duty at Long Thon. And then I was selected to be the personal pilot for a Major General. McKenzie was his name, with the mission of supporting long-range patrols, BURP teams. My awards was air medals you receive being in a combat zone. I was awarded 56 air medals. One time I had more air medals than anybody else in the military. I don't know how long that lasts, if it still exists. Flying members of the Eisenhower family for his funeral.
Okay.
I was selected to be personal pilot for members of the Eisenhower family. Some of them from Kansas City to Abilene, where he was eventually laid to rest, and then back. And there were several missions during that time. When you see SAM missiles being launched and you're flying the DMZ, you know, it puts cold chills up your back. When you see a Russian MiG pull up beside you, your airplane, obviously you don't know what's the next action is going to be, you know. Obviously I successfully got out of that, but you know, your first thoughts would be, well, this is it, you know.
We were over by Cambodian border,
Okay.
and we seen a little action there. And one night it was just one platoon that I was with. And that night we took, I think it was like 7 mortar rounds in about a 50-foot area. Nobody got hit, nobody was hurt. And I was asleep on the berm, and when the round hit, it hit at the bottom of my feet, never put a scratch on me, blowed me outside of the berm. And I was crawling, you know, I thought I was going the right direction, and when the next round went off, I could see I was going the wrong direction. I was going outside the perimeter instead of coming back inside. So I just turned around and came on back in. And
Well, you were blessed, and so was your unit then.
oh Lord, yes, it was.
Yes.
I'm talking about, it was people who had duffel bags at the end of their feet, and rounds hit close right in behind the duffel bag. I mean, clothes was blown everywhere. Nobody had a scratch.
Wow, that's
So
amazing.
you couldn't be no luckier than that. We were watching news one night and they were talking about this place called Coochie, and that's where my base camp was. Now when we'd come in, they would take all our weapons and lock them up. Well, they showed Coochie and they showed the underground part of Coochie, and it was like an anthill. The Vietnamese the VC had tunnels, so many tunnels under Coochie, they could have came up right beside my building. And we didn't have nothing to fight with.
So they probably were under wherever you were. They were probably underneath
They were
there.
underneath us. They were living underneath us while we were living on top of the ground.
Wow.
They were underground.
How far down? Did they say how far down it was?
They would go like 20, 30 feet, and then it might just be one big room.
Wow. Isn't
And
it?
and we trained for the tunnels before I went to, when I first went into Vietnam, we had to train for the tunnels. And that's the darkest that you could ever imagine. When you drop down in that tunnel, it's a little daylight shining in the tunnel, but once you get in the tunnel and move, you can't even see the walls of the tunnel.
Made the decision right to put armed guards on the airplanes. At that time, there were not enough civilians or federal agents to go on the aircraft for protection. So went out a call for military people to, I guess, how you say, we were recruited, let's put it that way. And it was a voluntary thing, so they were only taking military, police, individuals, Air Force, and Marine, people that had police background, basically. And so I volunteered, and they were only taking individuals that were E6 or above to do that, because it matured.
So by this time you were in E6.
I was in E6.
You were in E6
I
at
was
the
in
time.
E6. I made E6 in about 3.5 years. Okay. So I volunteered, and you had to go psychological stiff and that right to make sure that you were suited for the job. So once did all the preliminary and psych vals and all that good stuff, and you were accepted. I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey, where we did about 2 weeks of training. Right, had to do with especially weapons training, and a lot of stuff that had to do with the makeup of the aircraft, what crew were going to do, and everything else the pilots were going to do in case of a proposed hijacking or hijacking threat or something like that. So you had all that training, and then you were actually graduated, and you were assigned to a particular airline to work with that airline while you were on there. Most of this lasted for about 6 months. So I actually worked with TWA airline for 6 months during the Sky Marshal program, right? Okay. And it was interesting. Right? So I was one of the original Sky Marshal. I had one interesting international flight that was, I was coming out of Athens, Greece, and it landed in, I think it was Italy someplace, or was it Portugal? Either one of those places. Mm-hmm. And the people all knew what seat the Sky Marshals were sitting in. And I was in first class section, and the stewardess comes up and she gives me a magazine. And we know, right, that that's an indication that there's something's wrong. So I opened it up, and it gave us a description of suspected Arabs that may attempt to hijack our aircraft. So I says, okay. And I tell you, every individual that came on the aircraft after that looked like an Arab. I say, oh man, right. But nothing happened, right? Nothing happened on the aircraft. Another very interesting story too is that I was coming out of London one time, flying back to New York City. Now let me tell you this one first.
All right.
My first international flight, big 747 aircraft. And in school they had taught you, well, you gotta sit here and you gotta sit there and you gotta do this and you gotta do that and so forth. So I went back and I was following the prescription that they had set on us. And I was sitting back there and I was reading my magazine for 8 hours in the flight. So we landed in London safely, and one of the passengers came up to me and says, "You're the Sky Marshal, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, how do you know?" He says, "Well, you didn't take your tie off, you didn't go to sleep, you did this and you did that and everything else, right? No, you was easy to pick out." I said, so I told myself, I'm not going to do that anymore, right? I don't want to be picked out as a Sky Marshal, right? So I started dressing a different way and everything else, right? Try to blend in with the passengers and everything else. So I'm coming out of London one time, right? And I had afro and velvet coats and all that stuff, right? I didn't look like a Sky Marshal, right? So when you're going through checkpoints, the police, the security, right? You go through and you're supposed to give them a password. So I'm going through checkpoint and I gave the London cop a password. He obviously didn't hear me, right? So I went over there and they started patting me down, right? And he hit my gun. And he says, "What's that?" I said, "That's my gun." He says, "Gun?" I said, "Yeah, wait a minute." So I opened up my suitcase, my briefcase, and I pulled out my ID, right, and showed it to him because we're behind closed doors, right? He says, "I would never thought you were a Sky Marshal." Say, okay, that's good. So I go and get on the flight, and guess who's on the flight? The whole Ike and Tina Turner Review. Going back after they just did a thing in London, right? So we were all back.
Did they sing for you?
No. Right,
no.
There was a bunch of them on there, right? I looked just like part of the Ike and Tina Turner Review. But that was interesting.
I'm a proud American. I'm proud to serve my 20 years and would do it again.
You develop friends very quickly in this military situation, very quickly. Particularly when you get into combat, because you're very dependent on each other.
To serve my country. I would have been glad to go to World War II, but I was just too young. But it just does something for you knowing you have done your duty. You know, life offers so much, and you want to give back. You want to do something besides for yourself. You know, try to live that way. And I'm glad I did serve.
What would you have done differently? And the route that I've taken, I don't think I would have done it any different.
I'm proud to be American, and I'm proud of this flag, and I'm just proud to be part of this country.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work start again with just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.